The massive human exploration vessel USS Horizon drifted slowly toward the Zeltari space station. The ship's hull gleamed in the light of an unfamiliar sun. This was a historic moment. After decades of searching the stars, humans had finally found an advanced alien civilization willing to talk. Lieutenant Frank Mitchell stood at the viewing window, watching the alien station grow larger, his heart beat faster than normal. As the ship's medical officer, he had studied everything known about the Zeltari, but that wasn't much. All he knew was that they looked somewhat like tall, blue-skinned humans with 4 arms and claimed to be physically superior to most species they had encountered. "Nervous, Frank?" asked a voice behind him. Frank turned to see Captain Olivia Winters. Her calm presence always steadied the crew. "A little," Frank admitted. "I never thought I'd be the first human to undergo an alien medical exam." Captain Winters placed a hand on his shoulder. "The diplomatic team chose you for a reason. You're not just a good doctor, you're level-headed. The Zeltari value scientific exchange, and your medical knowledge makes you the perfect representative." Frank nodded, though his stomach still felt tight. "I've heard their chief medical officer, Dr. Zalvor, is quite respected among their people." "That's putting it mildly," Winters said with a slight smile. "According to their ambassador, Dr. Zalvor has written the definitive texts on comparative xenobiology. He's apparently eager to add humans to his research." The ship's comm system chimed. "Captain, we're docking in 5 minutes, announced the pilot. "Well," Captain Winters said, "time to make history." The docking procedure went smoothly. Frank stood with Captain Winters and 3 other crew members as the airlock door slid open. The delegation of Zeltari waiting for them was impressive. All stood nearly 7 feet tall, their blue skin shimmering slightly under the lights. Their 4 arms were positioned with 2 at shoulder height and 2 at what would be waist level on a human. One Zeltari stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Zevnar. Welcome to Outpost Zelta 7. Captain Winters stepped forward. "Captain Olivia Winters of the USS Horizon. On behalf of Earth and humanity, we thank you for this opportunity." The formal greetings continued for several minutes. Frank noticed one Zeltari staring at him intensely. This one wore a white coat-like garment with strange symbols on the chest. The alien's large eyes, completely black without visible pupils, kept examining Frank from head to toe. Finally, the ambassador gestured to the staring Zeltari. "This is Dr. Zalvor, our chief medical officer and most accomplished physiologist. He will be conducting the examination of your crew member." Dr. Zalvor stepped forward, all 4 arms clasped in front of him in some formal posture. "I understand I will be examining this specimen." His voice had an odd musical quality, but the translation software handled it well. Frank noticed the word specimen, but kept his expression neutral. "Lieutenant Frank Mitchell, medical officer. I look forward to our exchange of knowledge." Zalvor's mouth formed what might have been a smile, though it didn't seem friendly. "Yes, I'm sure it will be enlightening. The Zeltari have met 17 spacefaring species. All have proven physiologically inferior to our evolution. I expect humans will be no different, but the scientific method demands I verify this before reaching conclusions." Captain Winters frowned slightly, but Frank gave her a subtle headshake. He had expected some arrogance. "I'm ready whenever you are, Doctor," Frank said politely. The Zeltari doctor made a gesture with his upper right arm. "We will begin immediately. My laboratory awaits." He turned and began walking down a curved corridor without checking if Frank was following. "Good luck," Captain Winters whispered. "Remember, you're representing all of humanity now." Frank nodded and followed Dr. Zalvor. Dr. Zalvor's laboratory was unlike any medical facility Frank had ever seen. The room was circular with glowing blue panels covering the walls. Strange machines hummed quietly, and in the center stood what appeared to be an examination table surrounded by floating screens. "You will remove your outer garments and lie there," Dr. Zalvor said, pointing to the table with his lower left arm while his upper arms adjusted something on a nearby console. Frank hesitated only briefly before removing his uniform jacket and shirt. The air in the lab felt cool against his skin. Dr. Zalvor turned and froze, all four of his arms suddenly still. "You have only 2 arms." His voice contained unmistakable surprise. "Yes," Frank replied evenly. "I thought you had studied our biological information in the data packet we sent ahead." The alien doctor made a dismissive gesture with his upper right hand. I glanced at it. I preferred direct observation without preconceptions. He approached Frank with a small scanning device. "Fascinating. Your species managed space travel with such limited appendages." Frank bit back a retort and lay on the examination table as directed. The surface adjusted to his body shape, becoming surprisingly comfortable. Dr. Zalvor began passing various instruments over Frank's chest. "Only 1 heart? How do you even survive past infancy?" The doctor's tone dripped with condescension. "The redundancy in Zeltari physiology includes a primary and secondary heart. Single-point organ failure would decimate your population." "We manage," Frank said simply. The alien doctor pressed a device against Frank's arm that took a blood sample with a quick pinch. "Your blood carries oxygen using iron. Extremely inefficient compared to our copper-based system." He shook his, head, 2 of his hands typing notes on a floating screen. "Your ancestors must have struggled to evolve past the primitive stage." Frank watched as his blood sample was automatically analyzed by a machine. The alien doctor stared at the results, with what looked like amusement. "Your cellular structure is so basic. No radiation resistance, minimal toxin processing capability." Dr. Zalvor continued scanning Frank's body. "And your skeletal structure? It's embarrassingly inefficient. The calcium-based formation lacks the flexibility and strength of our carbon-silicon hybrid bones." Frank remained silent, reminding himself of Captain Winter's words. He represented all of humanity now. "Please turn onto your stomach," Dr. Zalvor instructed. As Frank complied, the doctor pressed along his spine. "Your nervous system is completely exposed to trauma with minimal protection. The Zeltari spinal column has protective regenerative tissue surrounding it. Our medical science has developed ways to treat spinal injuries," Frank offered. Dr. Zalvor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Treatments for problems that proper evolution would have prevented." He moved to examine Frank's legs. "Your muscle density is approximately 1/3 of a Zeltari adult. I'm surprised you can even stand under standard gravity." The examination continued for nearly 2 hours. Dr. Zalvor took tissue samples, measured Frank's reflexes, and tested his lung capacity. Each test brought new mockery. "Your lung efficiency is that of a Zeltari child," the doctor noted, "and your visual spectrum is severely limited. You cannot even see basic radiation warnings." Finally, Frank was allowed to sit up and put his shirt back on. His patience was wearing thin, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "I am going to run comprehensive analysis on your samples," Dr. Zalvor said, storing various vials in a machine. "I look forward to documenting this fascinating evolutionary dead end." Frank took a deep breath. "Doctor, I understand our biology. May seem primitive to you, but humans have survived and thrived on a planet with significant environmental challenges." Dr. Zalvor waved all 4 hands dismissively. Yes. All species believe they are special. The Dravik thought their thick skin made them superior until they met the Zeltari. The Moraks believed their 3 brains gave them an advantage until our cognitive tests proved otherwise." He turned to face Frank directly. "Rest assured, I will be thorough in my analysis. Science demands precision, even when studying clearly inferior specimens." Frank stood up, his back straight. "I look forward to your complete findings, Doctor. Perhaps there will be surprises." Dr. Zalvor's mouth formed that not-quite smile again. "I highly doubt that, Lieutenant Mitchell. I highly doubt that." Acutely aware that what happened in the next few hours might shape human-Zeltari relations for generations to come. Despite Dr. Zalvor's obvious condescension, Frank felt a spark of excitement. He was about to learn about alien biology firsthand, something no human doctor had ever done before. As they walked deeper into the station, Frank noticed the other Zeltari watching him with curious eyes. He straightened his back and walked with confidence. The examination hadn't even started, but he already felt like he was being tested. Captain Olivia Winters frowned as she listened to Frank's report about his examination. They sat in a small meeting room the Zeltari had provided for the human delegation. The walls were an odd purple color that seemed to shift slightly in the light. "So he spent the entire time insulting human physiology?" she asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. Frank nodded. "Pretty much. According to Dr. Zalvor, we're an evolutionary dead end with inferior everything." He rubbed his arm, where the doctor had taken tissue samples. "But I think there's something else going on. The Zeltari seem very invested in proving their biological superiority." Science Officer Ethan Collins, who had been quietly listening, leaned forward. "It might be cultural. From the limited information we've gathered, the Zeltari rose to prominence by outcompeting other species in their home system. Their entire society seems built around the concept of natural superiority." "That doesn't excuse bad manners," Captain Winters said firmly. She stood up. "I'm going to speak with Ambassador Zevnar about this. We came here in peace and scientific exchange, not to be treated like lab rats." Just as she moved toward the door, it slid open to reveal Ambassador Zevnar. The tall blue alien entered the room with two aides following behind. "Captain Winters," the ambassador said with a slight bow. "I trust your crew member's examination went well?" "Actually, Ambassador, that's what I wanted to discuss with you," Captain Winters replied. "Lieutenant Mitchell reports that Dr. Zalvor's behavior was disrespectful and unprofessional." The ambassador's four hands made a series of complicated gestures. "Unprofessional? Dr. Zalvor is our most distinguished medical researcher." "Distinguished or not," Captain Winters said, "constantly referring to humans as inferior or primitive is not conducive to positive diplomatic relations." Ambassador Zevnar's black eyes narrowed slightly. "Dr. Zalvor speaks only scientific truth. If human physiology is indeed inferior, should he not state this fact? We Zeltari value truth over emotional comfort." Frank stood up. "With respect, Ambassador, he made his judgments before completing his analysis. That's not scientific method, that's bias." The ambassador turned his gaze to Frank. "You question the scientific integrity of our most accomplished physiologist?" The tension in the room grew thick. Captain Winters stepped forward, placing herself slightly between Frank and the ambassador. "We question the diplomatic value of making premature judgments," she said carefully. "Our species may be different, but difference doesn't automatically mean inferiority." One of the ambassador's aides whispered something in the Zeltari language. The ambassador listened, then made a gesture that might have indicated concession. "Perhaps there has been a cultural misunderstanding," Ambassador Zevnar said finally. "I will speak with Dr. Zalvor about his communication approach. However, I cannot ask him to alter his scientific conclusions." "That's fair," Captain Winters agreed. "All we ask is professional respect." The ambassador nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the door. "I should inform you that Dr. Zalvor has requested additional tests. He finds some aspects of human physiology puzzling." After the Zeltari left, Ethan Collins looked at Frank with raised eyebrows. "Puzzling? That doesn't sound like someone convinced of your inferiority." Frank nodded slowly. "I noticed something when he was reviewing my blood work. There was a moment when he seemed genuinely surprised, though he covered it quickly." "What do you think he found?" Captain Winters asked. "I don't know," Frank admitted. "But something in my test results didn't fit his preconceptions." Captain Winters looked thoughtful. When Frank returned to Dr. Zalvor's laboratory the next day, he immediately noticed a change. The alien doctor was hunched over a display, all four arms moving quickly as he adjusted controls and examined data. Equipment that hadn't been present yesterday now filled one side of the room. Most notably, Dr. Zalvor didn't look up when Frank entered. "You requested more tests, Doctor?" Frank said after waiting nearly a minute. Dr. Zalvor's head snapped up, his black eyes widening slightly as if he had forgotten Frank was coming. Yes, I did." His tone lacked yesterday's mockery. I need to verify some anomalous readings from your initial samples. Frank walked closer, trying to see the display, but Dr. Zalvor quickly shut it down. What kind of anomalies? Nothing concerning, the doctor said, waving his upper right hand dismissively. Likely just calibration errors in our equipment when processing alien biology. Please sit there. He pointed to a chair surrounded by scanning equipment. Frank sat down, watching Dr. Zalvor carefully. The alien's behavior had changed dramatically. Gone was the open contempt. Instead, the doctor seemed intensely focused, almost anxious. I'll be subjecting your cells to various stress factors, Dr. Zalvor explained, attaching small sensors to Frank's arms. Temperature variations, radiation exposure, oxygen deprivation, all at safe levels, of course. Of course, Frank echoed, not entirely convinced. May I ask what you're looking for? Dr. Zalvor paused, all four hands momentarily still. Scientific thoroughness, he said finally. Nothing more. For the next hour, Frank sat quietly as the doctor ran his tests. Occasionally, Frank felt warmth or cold through the sensors, but nothing painful. What fascinated him was watching Dr. Zalvor's reactions. The alien's eyes kept darting between his displays and Frank himself, and several times he made strange chirping sounds under his breath. Finally, Dr. Zalvor removed the sensors and stepped back. Your cellular response patterns are unexpected, he admitted reluctantly. In what way? Frank asked. The doctor seemed to debate with himself before answering. Zeltari cells are highly specialized and efficient in optimal conditions. When stressed beyond certain parameters, they fail rapidly. He gestured to a display showing two cell samples side by side. The left is Zeltari, the right is yours. Frank watched as both samples were subjected to what appeared to be increasing heat. The Zeltari cells maintained their structure longer, but when they finally broke down, they did so completely. The human cells, however, began changing shape earlier but continued functioning in some reduced capacity. Your cells demonstrate remarkable adaptability under stress, Dr. Zalvor said, his voice now carrying a hint of reluctant respect. They sacrifice optimal function to maintain basic survival far beyond what should be possible. That's how we evolved, Frank explained. Earth has extreme environmental variations. Species that couldn't adapt didn't survive. Dr. Zalvor made a gesture Frank hadn't seen before. The Zeltari homeworld has been stable for millions of years. Our evolution favored specialization and efficiency. He turned back to his displays, but your adaptation ability, it's unprecedented in our research. Frank felt a small surge of pride. Does this mean humans aren't an evolutionary dead end after all? The doctor's four hands moved in what might have been discomfort. I need to conduct more comprehensive tests before reaching new conclusions. His tone had become carefully neutral. Would you be willing to participate in a comparative physical assessment? I would like to observe human adaptability in a whole organism context. You mean like a physical endurance test? Frank asked. Yes, comparing your capabilities against a Zeltari volunteer under varied conditions. Dr. Zalvor paused. I have already requested permission from both Ambassador Zevnar and your Captain Winters. Frank nodded slowly. I'd be willing, as long as it's safe. Of course, Dr. Zalvor said quickly. This is purely scientific research. But something in the alien's manner suggested to Frank that the doctor was now genuinely intrigued by human physiology, though still unwilling to admit it openly. As Frank left the laboratory, he couldn't help smiling. Dr. Zalvor might still believe Zeltari were superior, but at least now he was having doubts. And in science, doubt was often the first step toward discovery. Be good for us. If there's something unique about human biology that interests them, it might improve our diplomatic position. Or make us more valuable as research subjects, Ethan said grimly. Frank stood up. Either way, I should prepare for more tests. If there's something about us that's caught Dr. Zalvor's attention, I want to know what it is. Be careful, Captain Winters warned, and report everything back to me. I don't trust these Zeltari entirely, especially this doctor. Frank nodded as he headed for the door. Don't worry, Captain. I think Dr. Zalvor may be about to learn that humans aren't as simple as he thought. The testing chamber was large and circular. Different stations with exercise and testing equipment were arranged around the room. In the center, a raised platform held monitoring devices and screens. Dr. Zalvor stood there watching as Frank entered through one door and Zeltari through another. "Lieutenant Mitchell, this is Kreshta," Dr. Zalvor said, gesturing to the other Zeltari. "He has volunteered to participate in our comparative assessment." Frank nodded politely to Kreshta. The Zeltari was taller than Frank by at least a foot and had the same blue skin as the others. His forearms looked muscular even at rest. He wore a tight-fitting outfit that resembled workout clothes. "I am honored to demonstrate Zeltari physiological superiority," Kreshta said with a slight bow. His tone wasn't mocking like Dr. Zalvor's had been. He simply stated what he believed was fact. Captain Winters and Ethan Collins entered the chamber and took seats in an observation area along with several Zeltari officials, including Ambassador Zevnar. "We will begin with basic strength tests," Dr. Zalvor announced. Then progress to speed, followed by endurance under various environmental conditions. Frank and Kreshta moved to the first station. It was a simple lifting mechanism. Kreshta easily lifted weights that Frank struggled with. When they reached the maximum Frank could handle, Kreshta continued for 3 more levels. Dr. Zalvor made notes on his floating screen. As expected, Zeltari muscle density provides approximately 3.2 times the strength of human musculature. They moved to the next station, which tested reaction time and sprint speed. Again, Kreshta outperformed Frank, though by a smaller margin than in the strength test. "Zeltari neural transmission is 1.7 times faster than human," Dr. Zalvor noted. Frank noticed Captain Winters looking concerned in the observation area. He gave her a small nod to indicate he was fine. These results weren't surprising. The Zeltari were clearly stronger and faster in short bursts. The third station was different. It featured 2 treadmills surrounded by environmental controls. "This will test sustained performance under changing conditions," Dr. Zalvor explained. "You will both run at a moderate pace while we gradually increase temperature and decrease oxygen levels, within safe limits," he added quickly, noticing Captain Winters' sharp look. Frank and Kreshta took their positions on the treadmills. The machine started at an easy jogging pace. For the first 10 minutes, both maintained the speed without difficulty. Then Dr. Zalvor began adjusting the environmental controls. The temperature slowly rose. Frank began to sweat, but kept his breathing steady. Beside him, Kreshta still looked comfortable. After 30 minutes, the oxygen level had decreased by 15%, and the temperature had risen by 10 degrees. Frank was breathing harder now, but he maintained his pace. To his surprise, Kreshta was showing signs of strain too. The Zeltari's breathing had become louder, and his blue skin had taken on a darker shade. "Interesting," Dr. Zalvor murmured, watching his monitors closely. At the 45-minute mark, with oxygen levels down by 25% and temperature up by 15 degrees, Kreshta suddenly stumbled. He recovered, but his pace slowed noticeably. "Do you require a stop, Kreshta?" Dr. Zalvor asked. "No," the Zeltari said firmly, though his voice sounded strained. "I will continue." Frank was suffering too. His lungs burned and sweat poured down his face. But years of training had taught him to push through discomfort. He focused on maintaining a steady rhythm and controlled his breathing carefully. The atmosphere in the Zeltari conference room was tense. Dr. Zalvor stood before a large display screen with Captain Winters, Frank, Ethan, and several Zeltari officials seated around a long table. The doctor looked different today, less arrogant, more focused. "I have completed my analysis of all test results," Dr. Zalvor began. His 4 hands were unnaturally still, clasped in front of him. "My findings require me to revise several of my initial conclusions about human physiology." Ambassador Zevnar leaned forward. "Explain, Doctor." Dr. Zalvor touched a control, and the screen displayed cellular images. "Zeltari evolution has optimized our biology for peak efficiency. Our cells perform their specialized functions with minimal energy waste." He gestured to one side of the screen. Human cells, however, sacrifice peak efficiency for something else entirely: adaptability. The images changed to show the results from Frank's endurance test. Under optimal conditions, Zeltari physiology outperforms human in nearly every metric. But as conditions deteriorate, something remarkable happens. The display showed side-by-side comparisons of how both species' cells responded to stress. Zeltari cells maintain optimal function until they reach a critical threshold, then experience rapid cascading failure. Human cells, however, begin adapting immediately. They sacrifice peak performance to maintain basic function across a much wider range of conditions. Frank watched as Captain Winters and Ethan exchanged meaningful glances. This was significant. In practical terms, Dr. Zalvor continued, this means humans can survive conditions that would be fatal to Zeltari. Your species possesses unprecedented cellular regeneration under sustained stress. Is this why Lieutenant Mitchell outlasted Kreshita in the endurance test? Ambassador Zevnar asked. Precisely, Dr. Zalvor replied. Zeltari physiology is optimized for short bursts of performance. Human biology is optimized for sustained effort and environmental adaptation. The doctor paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. It is a different evolutionary strategy than our own, but I cannot scientifically classify it as inferior. It is simply different, with its own advantages. Captain Winters smiled slightly. Doctor, you're actually saying humans have superior adaptability. Dr. Zalvor's hands made an uncomfortable gesture. I would not use the term superior, Captain. But yes, in this specific aspect, human cellular response shows capabilities beyond what we have observed in any other species, including our own. Frank decided it was time to explain. Earth has extreme environmental variations: deserts, Arctic regions, high mountains, deep oceans. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can't outrun most animals, but we can outlast almost all of them. Dr. Zalvor looked genuinely fascinated now. While the Zeltari homeworld has been environmentally stable for millions of years, our evolution favored specialization rather than adaptation. He touched another control, showing a new set of data. I also discovered that human cells show remarkable healing capabilities when damaged. Your bodies are constantly repairing themselves. So, what does this mean for our species relationship? Ambassador Zevnar asked. Dr. Zalvor turned to face the ambassador directly. It means we have much to learn from each other. Human adaptability could help us solve several medical challenges our society faces, particularly degenerative conditions that occur when our specialized cells fail. Captain Winters nodded. And Zeltari efficiency could help humans develop new medical treatments as well. The ambassador looked thoughtful. I will discuss a formal medical exchange program with my government. He turned to Dr. Zalvor. You will prepare a full report on your findings. I already have, Dr. Zalvor said. He glanced at Frank. With Lieutenant Mitchell's help, I believe we could develop treatments for conditions that have plagued our people for generations. Frank nodded. I would be honored to collaborate, Doctor. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Zalvor approached Frank. Privately, the alien doctor seemed different now, the mockery gone from his demeanor. I must acknowledge my error in judgment, Dr. Zalvor said quietly. Your biology is not primitive. It is elegant in ways I failed to recognize. Frank smiled. That's the beauty of science, Doctor. It leads us to truth even when it contradicts our expectations. Dr. Zalvor made a gesture that Frank now recognized as respect. Indeed, Lieutenant Mitchell, indeed it does. At the 1 hour mark, Kreshita stumbled again, and this time couldn't recover. He fell to his knees, gasping. Dr. Zalvor immediately normalized the environment around him. Enough, Dr. Zalvor said, his voice containing a note of surprise. He turned to Frank, who was still running. You may stop as well, Lieutenant. Frank slowed to a walk, then stopped. He was exhausted, but still on his feet. The room fell silent as both Zeltari and humans stared at him. How is this possible? Ambassador Zevnar asked from the observation area. Kreshita is one of our finest physical specimens. Dr. Zalvor looked at his data, then at Frank with new eyes. "It appears human physiology has adaptations we did not anticipate, particularly in sustained performance under adverse conditions." Frank, still catching his breath, managed a small smile. "On Earth we call it endurance. It's what humans do best." News of Dr. Zalvor's discoveries spread quickly through the Zeltari scientific community. Within days, the space station buzzed with activity as more Zeltari scientists arrived to learn about human biology. Frank found himself spending most of his time in the laboratory, explaining Earth's varied environments and how they shaped human evolution. "Your species developed in a crucible of change," Dr. Zalvor said one morning as they reviewed data together. "While we perfected ourselves in stability." Frank nodded. "Different paths, different strengths." The Zeltari doctor touched a control, bringing up images of cellular samples. "We have identified the specific genetic sequences responsible for your adaptability. They are remarkably complex." "Could they help with the degenerative conditions you mentioned?" Frank asked. Dr. Zalvor's 4 hands moved in an excited gesture. "Yes, preliminary tests show promising results. The cellular repair mechanisms in human DNA could potentially be integrated into Zeltari medical treatments." Captain Winters entered the laboratory, accompanied by Ambassador Zevnar. Both looked pleased. "Good news," Captain Winters announced. "Earth's Medical Council has approved a formal exchange program. They're sending a team of our top medical researchers." Ambassador Zevnar nodded. "And my government has approved construction of a joint research facility, the first of its kind between our species." Dr. Zalvor's normally reserved demeanor broke into what Frank now recognized as a Zeltari smile. "This is extraordinary. The medical possibilities are endless." "There's more," Captain Winters continued. "They've asked for a Zeltari representative to return with us to Earth to help establish the program." She looked at Dr. Zalvor. "They specifically requested you, Doctor." The alien physician froze momentarily, all 4 arms perfectly still. "Me? After my initial misconceptions about human biology?" Frank smiled. "Perhaps because of them. You were willing to change your view when presented with evidence. That's the mark of a true scientist." Ambassador Zevnar made a formal gesture toward Dr. Zalvor. "You would bring honor to our people by accepting this position." "I would be privileged," Dr. Zalvor said, his voice carrying a hint of emotion Frank hadn't heard before. Later that day, Frank found Dr. Zalvor in a quiet corner of the station, staring out at the stars through a viewing port. The doctor's posture suggested deep thought. "Something troubling you, Doctor?" Frank asked as he approached. Dr. Zalvor turned. "Not troubling, humbling." He gestured to the stars. "For generations, the Zeltari believed we had achieved biological perfection. We measured all other species against our standards and found them wanting." The doctor's 4 hands clasped together. "Now I must return to my people and tell them that perfection comes in many forms, and that what we considered primitive may, in fact, be advanced in ways we never considered." Frank stood beside the alien doctor, looking out at the same stars. The best scientific discoveries often force us to reconsider what we thought we knew. "Indeed." Dr. Zalvor was quiet for a moment. "I have been reviewing the medical histories your ship provided. Humans have survived plagues, radiation, extreme environments, always adapting, always continuing. It is remarkable. We're stubborn, that way," Frank said with a small smile. "More than stubborn," Dr. Zalvor replied. "Your genetic coding contains solutions to problems the Zeltari have struggled with for centuries. And I suspect we have knowledge that could benefit humans as well." "That's why exchange programs work," Frank said. "Both sides gain." Dr. Zalvor turned fully to face Frank. "I must apologize again for my initial treatment of you. Had I maintained my prejudice, both our species would have lost this opportunity." Frank shook his head. "No apology needed. Science led you to the truth. That's what matters." 6 months later, Frank stood at the entrance of the new joint medical research facility on the outskirts of Zeltari space. The building was impressive, a blend of human and Zeltari architectural styles. One half featured the clean, curved lines preferred by Zeltari designers, while the other incorporated the more angular approach of human architecture. Together, they formed something new and beautiful. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Captain Winters said, coming to stand beside him. Frank nodded. Hard to believe this all started with a medical examination and a mocking alien doctor. They both smiled at the memory. So much had changed since those first tense days. The facility before them was just one visible sign of the growing cooperation between humans and Zeltari. Inside, the main laboratory bustled with activity. Human and Zeltari scientists worked side by side, sharing knowledge and techniques. In the center of it all stood Dr. Zalvor, directing operations with his forearms moving in complex patterns as he explained something to a group of human doctors. When he spotted Frank and Captain Winters, Dr. Zalvor excused himself and came over to greet them. "Lieutenant Mitchell, Captain Winters," he said warmly. "Welcome to what you humans might call our new beginning." "It's impressive," Captain Winters said, looking around. "Your government has been incredibly supportive." "As has yours, Doctor," Zalvor replied. "The human medical team has been invaluable. Come, let me show you our progress." The doctor led them through the facility, pointing out various research stations. In one area, Zeltari scientists were studying human DNA sequences. In another, human doctors were learning about Zeltari surgical techniques. "We've already developed 3 new treatments based on human cellular regeneration," Dr. Zalvor explained, proudly. "A degenerative muscle condition that has affected Zeltari for generations is showing remarkable improvement with the new therapy. And our doctors report that Zeltari nerve repair techniques are revolutionizing human treatments for spinal injuries," Frank added. They stopped by a window overlooking a garden area where human and Zeltari medical staff relaxed together. Some were clearly engaged in friendly conversation, while others simply enjoyed the peaceful setting. "I never would have predicted this outcome when I first examined you," Dr. Zalvor said quietly to Frank. "I was so certain of Zeltari superiority." Frank smiled. "That's the beauty of science. It takes us places we never expected to go." Captain Winters nodded. "Speaking of unexpected places, the Galactic Council has contacted Earth. Apparently news of our medical cooperation has spread. 3 other species have requested to join the research program." "Really?" Dr. Zalvor's black eyes widened in surprise. "That would be unprecedented. It seems we've started something bigger than just human and Zeltari medicine," Frank said. Later, that evening, a small ceremony was held to formally appoint Frank as the human liaison to the facility. As he accepted the position, he looked out at the mixed audience of humans and Zeltari. "6 months ago, I stood in a laboratory while my biology was dismissed as primitive," Frank began. "Today, I stand among friends and colleagues, all of us, learning from each other's differences." He smiled at Dr. Zalvor. "We've discovered that biological diversity is not a hierarchy but a spectrum, with each species adapted to its own unique challenges." After the ceremony, Dr. Zalvor approached Frank with what appeared to be a small gift box. Inside was a Zeltari medical insignia. "This is normally given only to our most respected physicians," the doctor explained. "But the medical board felt you had earned it." Frank was touched by the gesture. "Thank you. This means a lot." Dr. Zalvor looked out at the stars visible through the facility's large windows. "I've been telling my colleagues about what I learned from humans," he said thoughtfully. "These humans may look fragile, but they've evolved something we never did, the ability to keep going when everything says they should stop." He turned back to Frank. "Perhaps that's the most valuable adaptation of all." Frank nodded, understanding the profound truth in those words. 2 species from different worlds with different evolutionary paths had found strength in their differences rather than conflict. And as they stood together, looking out at the stars, both knew this was just the beginning of what they could accomplish together. "Yes," the alien doctor agreed. "Though I admit, it was disconcerting to have my core beliefs challenged so completely." His black eyes seemed to soften. I have much to learn about humans, it seems. And we have much to learn about the Zeltari, Frank replied. That's what makes this exciting. We're just beginning to understand each other. The two stood in comfortable silence, a human and a Zeltari, looking out at the stars they both explored. Different biologies, different evolutionary paths, but united by curiosity and the search for knowledge.